Eli Vance's eyes opened slowly. The first thing he noticed was the light. It was soft, bluish, and seemed to come from everywhere at once. He blinked several times, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The air was silent but filled with a low, steady hum. He felt strange. Lighter somehow, as if gravity had loosened its grip on him. The second thing he noticed was the surface beneath him. Smooth, metallic, and cool. He was lying on a flat platform, completely unclothed, and a shiver ran through him. Not from cold, but from surprise. He tried to sit up, but his body moved differently than he expected. His limbs felt strange, almost elastic, and when he raised his arms, he noticed something that made his heart race. His skin seemed to shimmer faintly, like it held its own light. He flexed his fingers, and tiny waves of energy spread outward, touching the surface of the platform without him realizing it. The console at the end of the room flickered to life. He hadn't touched it. For a moment, Eli froze. He could barely remember what had happened before this. The last thing he remembered was preparing for the Europa expedition, humanity's most daring mission yet. They had intended to travel beyond Jupiter, explore its moons, and then return to Earth. It was supposed to be routine, at least as routine as space exploration could be. Cryosleep had been part of the plan, putting the crew into stasis for decades. And now somehow he was awake, but nothing else made sense. The room shifted slightly in his vision, or perhaps it was the light. He could feel a presence before he even saw them. 3 beings approached, moving with a grace that was almost liquid. They were tall and elegant, but not human. Their forms shimmered, translucent like glass, with faint metallic outlines that caught the light. There were no faces as humans had faces, no limbs exactly like his own. Yet every movement seemed intentional and meaningful. They stopped a few meters away from him, their presence humming softly, as if the air itself responded to their existence. Eli felt no fear, only awe. He realized he could hear them, not in the usual way. There was no voice, only a resonance that spoke directly to his mind. Their message was clear: he was not in danger. Yet they were shocked by him. "You are changed," one of them said, its tone harmonizing in a way that felt almost musical. Eli's mind raced. Changed? How? His voice sounded strange, as if it belonged to someone else. The words came slowly at first, then more naturally. He tried to stand, but again his body responded differently. It was like learning to move all over again. The beings explained that the human expedition had been lost. The Europa mission had vanished decades ago, and this ship had been drifting through space for centuries before they found it. Time had moved differently, as it often did in the void between stars. Eli had been preserved in cryosleep, but the technology of his pod and exposure to unknown cosmic radiation had transformed him at the cellular level. He was now the first known instance of a human quantum hybrid, an individual whose body had merged with subtle forms of energy around it. At first, Eli struggled to understand what this meant. His hands emitted faint pulses of light, and when he focused, he could feel the energy of the room itself. A gentle wave of it moved toward him, almost as if the room recognized him as part of its own rhythm. He could see patterns in the light that no human eyes could normally detect, and when he tried to speak again, words felt heavier with meaning. The beings watched him closely. Their expressions, if they could be called that, showed fascination. Eli realized that while they were advanced, they were not used to emotion. Yet his curiosity, his confusion, his delight, even his fear created a kind of resonance in them. He was alive, not just biologically, but fully and unpredictably alive. He spent the first hours trying to explore this new reality. Every movement he made sent ripples through the air. When he waved his hand, the console lights shimmered and shifted in response. He discovered he could move objects without touching them, but only when he concentrated. Small gestures created patterns of glowing lines, each one reflecting his mood and intent. The beings, who introduced themselves as the Aurelians, explained that they had long transcended physical form. They lived as patterns of energy, guiding civilizations and observing the universe. To them, movement and change were logical and predictable. Eli's body, filled with emotion and unpredictability, was both confusing and mesmerizing. He began to explore the ship. The corridors were sleek, clean, and empty, with soft walls that seemed to respond to touch. Whenever he moved, the lights followed his motion. He touched the surfaces and they glimmered under his fingers as if acknowledging him. In some ways, it was like the ship itself recognized the new form he had become. Days passed, or at least what felt like days to Eli. Time was a strange concept here, unbound by earthly cycles. He learned to control some of the energy within him, to create small displays of light and sound. The Aurelians observed but did not interfere. Their fascination grew, for they had never seen life like his. Then came the moment when he tested the limits of his abilities. He focused on the ship's navigation console, feeling the energy flowing from him into the controls. Lights shifted, coordinates adjusted, and a map of the stars unfolded before him in 3 dimensions. He could see distant solar systems, nebulae, and galaxies, all displayed in intricate layers of glowing light. He realized the universe had become something he could feel as much as he could see. Every star, every planet, every wave of energy resonated with him. It was overwhelming and beautiful, like waking from a long dream only to discover the dream was reality. The Aurelians spoke again, noting his ability to perceive and influence their instruments. "You are unique," they said. "We have studied life in many forms, but you are the first we have encountered with such emotion." Eli smiled, feeling warmth at the word. Emotion. That human trait, often dismissed as weakness, had survived even here, even in a body no longer fully human, and he realized, perhaps for the first time, that this was what humanity had always been about: curiosity, resilience, and wonder. When he looked at the Aurelians, he saw potential. They had knowledge and power, but they had never understood the chaos of feeling, the unpredictability that drove humans to explore and create. Perhaps he thought he could teach them something, and perhaps, he thought with a quiet thrill, they could teach him something as well. That night, or whatever counted as night aboard the drifting ship, Eli lay on the metallic platform again. He was no longer the man who had boarded the Europa mission. He was something new, something in between. Yet in the quiet hum of the room, he felt alive, and for the first time he understood that being human was more than flesh. It was curiosity, emotion, and the courage to face the unknown. Above him, the Aurelians watched silently. For the first time, they wondered what it meant to feel, and Eli, unclothed and changed, smiled at the beginning of a new adventure he had never imagined. Eli woke to the gentle hum of the ship. This time, he did not feel fear or confusion. He felt curious. The hour since he had awoken had been filled with discovery, each new sensation revealing possibilities he had never imagined. He could feel the energy around him, flowing through the walls, the air, and the very structure of the ship. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and he realized that he could follow it, direct it, and even shape it in subtle ways. The Aurelians observed him silently, hovering near the soft glow of the platform. Their forms shimmered as always, but now Eli sensed a change in them as well. Where before they had been purely logical and measured, now there was hesitation, curiosity, almost excitement. They had never encountered emotion as pure and unfiltered as human emotion. They were learning from him just as he was learning from them. Eli rose and stepped toward the main corridor. As he walked, the floor beneath him responded to his presence, lights shifting and flowing like water. He experimented, testing his control. A gentle wave of his hand made the walls pulse with soft colors. He realized that he could feel the ship's consciousness, or at least, its form of awareness, and it responded to him as naturally as a friend would. The Aurelian spoke, again using the resonance that touched his mind. "Your presence changes us. We did not anticipate that an individual could affect the collective so deeply." Eli laughed softly, a sound that seemed to echo through the corridors in a warm, human way. "Maybe you've been observing too long and forgotten how it feels to feel." For hours he experimented. He could read the flow of energy through circuits and lights, sense the position of every star in the nearby galaxy, and even detect the faint patterns of energy that the Aurelians themselves used to communicate. He discovered that when he concentrated, he could amplify these patterns. A flick of his hand could align them, smoothing their resonance into something he could understand intuitively. It was as though he were learning a language that the universe itself had been speaking all along. Curiosity drove him further. He approached a large viewport at the front of the ship, and his eyes widened. Stars stretched infinitely across the void, nebulae glowing like colored smoke, and planets spun silently in distant orbits. With a simple thought, he could see the energy patterns of the planets and stars pulsing like heartbeats in the vast emptiness. The scale of it was overwhelming but exhilarating. The Aurelians watched, fascinated, and one spoke in a softer tone than before. You experience everything. Emotion enhances perception, Eli smiled. It's not just perception. It's understanding. Feeling gives meaning to everything. In the days that followed, he taught the Aurelians in ways they had never known. He showed them humor. Small jokes, moments of surprise, laughter that spread unpredictably through the air. He demonstrated curiosity, moving from one console to another, asking questions about things that might seem unimportant, but revealed new patterns when observed carefully. And he showed them creativity, arranging lights and sounds into shapes that made no logical sense but felt beautiful. At first, the Aurelians were hesitant. They valued logic and reason above all else. But slowly their forms began to shimmer differently. One of them, who eventually named itself Luma, experimented with individual identity. It moved apart from the collective flow to explore patterns independently, testing the emotions Eli expressed. The other Aurelians hesitated, unsure if this was proper or safe. Eli noticed it immediately. Being human isn't about following rules, he said gently. It's about experiencing, exploring, and sometimes breaking what seems impossible. That's how we grow. They watched as he touched the ship's controls again, this time directing energy to stabilize a distant satellite cluster that was drifting dangerously close to a planetary system. He didn't use strength or force. He guided the energy, understanding its patterns and harmonizing with them. Slowly, carefully, he moved the satellites into safe orbits. The Aurelians were amazed. Logic alone could not have done it. Only intuition, understanding, and emotion made it possible. Over time, Eli's connection with the Aurelians deepened. He learned their history, how they had evolved beyond physical form, how they observed and guided countless civilizations. They learned from him that unpredictability was not chaos but potential. His presence began to influence them in subtle ways. They laughed at his jokes, hesitated when they felt uncertainty, and even expressed admiration and care. One day, while exploring a new chamber in the ship, Eli discovered something unexpected. A large crystal sphere floated in the center of the room, radiating gentle light. As he approached, he felt a resonance inside himself that matched it perfectly. He realized that he could communicate directly with it, sensing its structure and energy. He touched it lightly and the sphere responded, shifting colors and forming patterns that told a story. It was a story of the universe itself, of stars being born, of planets forming, of civilizations rising and falling. Eli marveled at it. This is incredible, he whispered. I can see life. The universe. Everything. Luma hovered nearby. Your ability to perceive these things? It is emotional. We cannot process it fully, Eli smiled. That's because you don't feel. You've observed, calculated, and predicted. But humans, we feel. That gives meaning to everything. As he explored the ship's vast systems, he began to realize his purpose. He was no longer simply a human lost in space. He was a bridge, between energy and matter, between logic and emotion, between humans and the Aurelians. And he felt something he had never known before, responsibility. Not to command, but to connect. Then a new challenge appeared. A cosmic storm approached the station. Energy waves, unlike anything the Aurelians had encountered, threatened to disrupt the entire ship. They began to withdraw, preparing to abandon it. Eli felt fear rising, not for himself but for the ship, the Aurelians, and the universe he had begun to understand. He placed his hands on the platform and closed his eyes. He could feel the storm as a living thing, pulsing with energy that was chaotic but patterned. Slowly he reached out, merging his own energy with the storm's rhythm. He guided it, smoothing its edges, calming its waves. It responded, shifting and bending to his influence. He did not use force. He understood. The Aurelians watched, silent and awed. They had never seen such a display of power. Yet it was not power alone that saved the ship. It was intuition, empathy, and connection. The storm passed, leaving calm and order in its wake. Eli opened his eyes and smiled. For the first time, the Aurelians experienced gratitude. They had never known emotion so pure and intentional. Luma approached him, its form shimmering brightly. You have taught us something we did not know we needed. Emotion, unpredictability, humanity, Eli nodded. It's not about being perfect. It's about experiencing, caring, and learning. That's what humans do best. They offered him a choice. He could remain with them, learning and teaching, becoming part of a union between humans and Aurelians. Or he could return to Earth, carrying knowledge that would transform humanity. He considered it carefully. Earth was home, but he had already grown beyond it. Finally, he spoke. Home isn't a place. It's everything we do and feel. I will stay for now, but I will carry Earth in my heart wherever I go. In the years that followed, Eli and the Aurelians explored space together. He taught them to laugh, to wonder, to feel. They taught him to see the universe not just as matter and energy, but as patterns, connections, and infinite possibilities. Humanity, through him, had left its mark once again. And everywhere they went, stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the universe itself recognized the human who woke unclothed and reminded it what it meant to be alive.